clip from back in 2008 to 2020. You see the president's numbers be pretty strong, but, and this is the warning, that you look at these numbers now, and you have to be aware of a thing called central count. There's 39 cities and 14 counties. I think Eric may have mentioned it earlier, that they hold all of their ballots in central count, their absentee ballots, and then they will dump them all at once. So if you look at those lists of counties and cities, there's a couple of cities like Cottage Grove in Oregon and Dane that will be dumped later. City of Milwaukee will be dumped later. Superior, Kenosha, Pleasant Valley, Summers, a lot of those places where it's tight right now, those ballots will get dumped later. So, there's a lot of people that are looking at it going, the president's ahead right now. I think the national networks, the cable networks said that it was going to be Arizona, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin that could call it. But, the guys in my hood are looking at it going, hey, I think the president's got it won. And I think it's still going to be a little bit longer. We only may be at halftime.
Yeah, Matt, there's still a lot of votes out there.
Yeah, I don't have many fingernails left, I got to say. But look, the central count in Milwaukee, all those absentee ballots in Milwaukee, they're not going to tell us the results until they tabulated every single one. And that's going to not be till early in the morning. And there's a ton of ballots there, and most of those are Democratic. So I think that's going to be the decisive turn here. I do want to echo something Brandon said, though. I do wish that the Biden campaign had spent more time here. I mean, he did come here a couple times, unlike Hillary Clinton, but, it's just too close. And all that time spent in Georgia and Texas and Ohio, I think they're going to look back on that and say, wow, why didn't we just park in Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania and leave those other ones for another time? Because, every vote matters here. And if your resources are in one place, they can't be in the other.
Matt, the other thing is that with these central counts that are still out there, the impact on the down ballot is not going to, I don't know that it's going to be as much as we thought it was before, because you look at the counties where there's central count that yet have to be dumped, but you look at races like Alberta Darlings in the city of Milwaukee, where she appears to be up, some of the other targeted races that Democrats thought they would have, some of the assembly races that Democrats thought they would have, where they spent $846,000 against Robin Voss, and he was winning last time I saw by 60-40. So you kind of wonder if this early, all these races that were in trouble, were they really in trouble? I mean, maybe we're going to see a couple of changes, and maybe central count will change all that, but it doesn't look to be that way yet.
And Brandon, you think this changed within the last week or so?
There has been a sense that in Wisconsin, I can't speak for other states, but that Trump has been here enough that, last week, we were talking about this earlier. Last week, we were looking for the kill shot from the Biden campaign. Last week was the time when they could have gone into Trump and put a kill shot commercial in that would have ended the campaign, and they did. And they were silent. They've been running the ads that they've had for several weeks. And while at the time those ads were good, they weren't timely as you got into the last 10 days. And in some cases, and again, I can only speak to Wisconsin, it looks like they went to a four corners offense. They really didn't have much of a presence. They were spending money on ads that maybe didn't impact it enough, and they let Trump come into the state 3 times untouched. Now, it may not be enough. They may have it, but the Biden campaign shouldn't let that happen if they thought they were going to win this.
And Matt, do you agree that Biden should have been here more?
Certainly, yeah. I wanted him more. I mean, every time I saw him in Georgia and in Texas, I was scratching my head. And I also think they could have made more use of Republicans in Wisconsin who didn't like Trump. I mean, former Senate Majority Leader Dale Schultz, for instance. I didn't see an ad with him. I would have liked to have seen that ad. I don't know if they even cut the ad. But, that speaks to what Brandon was talking about, where, they went with the soft, fuzzy Joe Biden, nice man ad. And they didn't really, hit people who were movable, I think. And, it's too early to say whether, it's over for Biden in Wisconsin or whether he's going to pull it out. But I just think strategists looking back are going to say, could have done more here in Wisconsin, just like they could have done more here in Wisconsin 4 years ago.
And I think we need to emphasize that this race is not over yet.
Correct.
Right. You still have all these central counties and cities that are going to count their ballots, and they're going to dump them in one big number, and you're going to see some of these places just flip the results that we're looking at now with 99% reporting. Even at 100% reporting, those central count numbers are going to come in. So you could be in for a big surprise when some of those places flip. But again, you look around the state and places where there are not central count numbers, Trump has got a pretty decent margin. As we said before, we're going to look to see where he performed and overperformed against last 4 years ago, and where Biden way overperforms over Clinton, and that was needed. And in some cases, I don't know that it's happening to the numbers that it should. I'm particularly surprised in Dane County because the central count change won't change the numbers much. And Biden's got a what, 77 something percent? The guy should be sitting at 90% in this county with as ferocious as Democrats have been in this county for all the hate that they hate Donald Trump with. They should be kicking it here, and they're not.
Yeah, 76-21 at the last count in Dane County. Is this the case in a lot of states across the country that there's these votes out there that a lot of votes still out there that have to come in yet? Matt?
Yeah, there are a lot of votes out there yet, and it's way too early. You know, we've got to wait and see what happens in Pennsylvania. They're going to be counting for a long time, and we got to wait for morning here in Wisconsin to see what happens in Milwaukee, and to see how the state turns. I do think, in looking at all the results coming in tonight, not only in Wisconsin but elsewhere, again, there's been an undercount of Trump votes by the pollsters, and I just think there are a lot of people, when the pollsters were calling them, those people who didn't want to tell the pollster who they were voting for, those were Trump voters.
You agree, Brandon? I guess not.
No, I think 4 years ago you could make a case that that there were lots of things going on that pollsters didn't understand. But over the course of 4 years, these folks needed to refine their tactics of how they're able to reach people to find their opinions. And I think while everybody could say, yep, there's people that don't talk to pollsters and they don't have the fair picture. If you recall 4 years ago, they weren't all wrong. They were pretty close. And remember, in the states that pollsters called it pretty close, Trump only won by some very small margins, even within that margin of error. So, like I said before, if polling numbers don't go your way, the polls are terrible. You know, they're awful. The pollsters didn't know what they're doing. They're using old hand crank phones. And if the polls are going your way, then yeah, it's very sophisticated polling and it works our way.
Do you think?
It's just hard.
Go
it's
ahead.
Hard,
Go ahead, Matt.
It's just so hard, I think, for progressives and Democrats to look at another race that is much closer than they thought it was going to be at this hour, and to just say, you know, what's going on. And so I think we need to examine both the polling industry, but also, you know, just seeing, you know, what the Trump campaign did and what the Biden campaign did, and why is it closing? I mean, Trump after the first debate was underwater, I thought. And then something happened between then and now to get it at least this close. And the question is, what was that?
Well, I don't think it's polling that you're going to look at. I think you're going to have to talk at the candidate's own message. I mean, simply put, you know, Joe Biden hasn't had much of a message out there. And as a consolidation point, the Democrat Party is pretty much centered on one singular message, and that is we have to get rid of Donald Trump. No matter if you were a socialist or a blue dog Democrat, your message was we have to get rid of Donald Trump, and we'll figure it all out later. We'll take the check now, cash it, we'll figure it out later. The message was get rid of Trump. And I don't, you know, that's a hard thing to keep going for month after month after month about building an issues campaign. And Biden was pretty thin on the issues. He really didn't have much going, and it showed in the last 10 days.
Well, healthcare was a big issue, and I don't know if it had as much legs as they thought it would. And the virus, you know, at this point, the virus may have been not as big of an issue as the Biden people thought. I mean, the Biden people thought, look how Trump has bungled the virus, and he has, dreadfully. But I think there are a lot of people out there who've just said, you know, it's been here, I've been dealing with it. It's not all his fault, it was a big problem. I think they're wrong, but I just think there's virus fatigue that actually may be helping Trump.
This would probably bring up talk again of getting rid of the Electoral College. Do you think that has any legs?
Depends.
Well, I wish it did, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon.
But again, Mark, it happens every 4 years depending on who wins. And, you know, I mean, it's kind of like maybe we should just move on from that. It is what it is. This is our process. It is our democracy. This is how we do it. And the let's get rid of the electoral process is usually one of those things that you find something to blame as the reason that you lost. So I think it's time to maybe move on from that one as well. Same with public financing of elections.
Well, there you go. I do think with public financing of
So
elections,
move on.
it's one reform we need to get to a more functional democracy here in this country, but we're a ways away from that.
How long do you think before we have a declared winner?
Noon tomorrow, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. Some states are reporting that they will take a couple of days and that they're allowed to take in mail for a couple of days. But it really depends on whether those states are ones that will make a difference. If it's a fait accompli by noon, as Matt says, tomorrow, when you've had central dumps and you've had absentee ballots counted, and there's margins that can't be exceeded by the number of ballots that they have in hand, you could have it for a couple of days. But I would say, get it done, but do it right. So you don't have people wondering around what they're going to do. You certainly don't want to foster any kind of unrest in this country because somebody thinks somebody's doing something with a ballot that they shouldn't. So let's just get it done.
We got to count every vote. That's the most crucial thing.
Well, of course you're going to count every vote. It's a question you're going to take 2 months to do it.
No, but whether we know, tonight at midnight or tomorrow at noon or the next day at noon, that doesn't really matter.
Well, I've heard in Brown County they're using all their fingers and all their toes to count the ballots. So.
Another interesting election night. Matt, Brandon, thanks for being with us this evening. We'll see what happens in the morning.
Mark, thanks for having us.
Thanks for being with us. Back to you, Charlotte and Eric.
See you, Matt.
Mark, thank you. And we're all watching very closely the 3rd Congressional District here in Wisconsin. Longtime Democratic incumbent Ron Kind facing off the Republican Derek Van Orden. This is a very tight race. Look at this. 55% of precincts reporting Ron Kind. Again, he's been there since 1997, relatively popular in the La Crosse area. You wonder maybe if the president's visit last week to the La Crosse area made a difference here. 50-50, 91,000 to 89,700 at this point. So very, very close. That's one we're going to keep watching as the night continues.
It's been a bit of a ping pong throughout the night.
It really has. That's been definitely something to watch.
Polls are closed, but there is still work to be done with those votes cast in Dane County.
Madeline O'Neill's been talking with the Madison and Dane County clerks today. She joins us downtown with the very latest. Maddie?
Well, still here tonight, even though the polls have closed, we see election workers coming and dropping off election materials. That's been happening since the polls closed. I'll show you. We've got some people inside of the building, and this is what is necessary to do before we find out final voter numbers. But I do want to tell you, here in Madison, as of 6 p.m., the voter turnout here, and that includes absentee ballots, in-person voting, that was at about 82%. And now that sets a record for recent presidential elections here in Madison. 2 years ago, we saw a turnout of 93% in November of 2018. But again, 82% is already passing the recent records for presidential elections. Now, of course, that included absentee ballots. We've been seeing that, the absentee ballot process of counting them today has gone rather smoothly. The clerk says that the goal was to get them all done by 8 p.m. and then at 7 p.m. they were already counted at 90 of 92 polling places. So as she said, they were on pace to be done by 8 p.m. as well. So she really credits poll workers for that. We had more than 5,000 this year working in Madison. That number is usually about 3,000 for presidential elections. 6,000 had signed up. They didn't need that many. They lost a few because of COVID. But really, 5,000 is a lot of poll workers. They were able to put those ballots into the tabulators throughout the day as there was in-person voting. So really, that's what we've seen tonight. Things have gone rather smoothly. Also just spoke with the Dane County clerk. He says that about 80% are reporting results already. There are still some big wards and polling places out there, including in Waunakee and Sun Prairie, that are still finishing up counting absentee ballots, which can be a little bit more tricky when there's a lot of in-person voters and poll workers just didn't have a chance to count those, so we're waiting on that. But most Madison wards have reported their results so far tonight as well.
So, Maddie, when we're talking about absentee ballots, we used to listen to Mark talk.
And I do want to say real quick, I can't hear you guys if you're talking to me. I think I might be on the wrong signal. Okay.
Maddie, can you hear us now?
Okay. So, you know, really there were some worries about, cyber threats, according to the Dane County Clerk, but he said he didn't see any of that today. Really, for a strange election with record-breaking numbers of absentee ballots, both clerks say things went pretty well today here in Dane County and Madison.
All right, I don't know if Maddie, can you hear us now if we had to ask a question for you? She cannot, clearly. So,
okay.
All right, Maddie O'Neill, who has been down there with the clerk's office down there. Let's bring up some of the numbers, because we had Brandon Scholes and Matt Rothschild talking to Mark about these absentee votes as they're being counted. She mentioned all but 2 of the precincts. Now, Madison has 92 precincts, so most of them are counted in the numbers we're seeing out of Madison right now, right? She talked to Scott McDonald, our Dane County clerk. He said 80% of those numbers in Dane County have been added up. Still waiting for some areas of Dane County to be added. She mentioned Sun Prairie and Wanakee, which are going to be a little bit more mixed than what you're going to see in the city of Madison in terms of numbers. So for the most part, basically my point I'm trying to make is that Dane County is pretty much in the numbers right now. They're done as far as absentee ballots are concerned.
What I think is amazing, I don't think any of us thought we would be where we are right now with all of the voter turnout that has occurred over the past few weeks, that we would actually be somewhat ahead, dare I say ahead, in counting all of these votes right now. Like we saw with Adam Duxter throughout the night, that Rock County is like, well, we're about ready to wrap things up here. We thought it was
They were very efficient, and perhaps all those people voting early enabled them to not have that much to do today, right? We heard a lot of times throughout the course of the day, the lines weren't real long, so those poll workers can feed those absentee ballots into their machines throughout the course of the day. Now, one thing those guys were talking about in that long discussion, Milwaukee County. That's a lot of absentee ballots. Those are all going to go at once between 3 and 5 tomorrow morning. So keep a close eye on that. As of this morning, that was 175,000 absentee ballots. Do we have the Wisconsin numbers right now in the presidential race? Last time we had it, it was 81,000.
We'll
get to the congressional district.
I think it was as like 7 o'clock tonight.
And the last number we had up there, there you go. Where is it? 81% of precincts reporting, and the difference there is about, help my math here, Charlotte. I know you're really good at math. 166 plus, so less than 200,000. The question will be, is that lead, if we get to 100%, and then all those ballots come in now it won't get to 100% because you're still going to have Milwaukee County absentee ballots, which I mentioned was 175,000 roughly as of this morning. Assume there are a handful more, maybe a few thousand.
Here's your difference right there.
That come in, excellent work, 112,000. Is that going to be enough? Remember, think back to the governor's race in 2018. Scott Walker led at 1:30 in the morning. We were sitting here, and 46,000 absentee ballots were counted from Milwaukee County. 39,000 of those absentee ballots went to Tony Evers, and he became the next governor of Wisconsin. So is that difference, the number you just did on your calculator, 112,737 with 81% of precincts reporting, you get 175,000. Or 175,000 absentee ballots. Let's add a few more for people that drove up today, that didn't mail it and dropped in their absentee ballots today in Milwaukee County, 3 to 5 a.m. I suggest you go to sleep, wake up and see what happens. I've had a lot of people texting me say, can I go to sleep? You'll find out in a few hours, because 3 to 5 a.m. is what they're telling us.
That's going to be
all those numbers. They're going to come.
Sense.
Will it be enough? Will the president's lead be enough to hold off the challenge of Joe Biden in Wisconsin, those 10 electoral votes, while the rest of the country's watching all these other states, Pennsylvania, not counting Philadelphia, Montgomery County, all those counties,
to see where,
until tomorrow.
Where is the rest of the country right now? And trying to keep track of that.
Let's take a look at these congressional races. We talked about Ron Kind, 23 years in Wisconsin's 3rd district. Brian Stile, now this was one that was expected. This has been Paul Ryan's seat for all but the last 2 years since 1998. Brian Stile is going to hang on to that tonight. 86% of precincts reporting. Brian Stile declared the winner over Roger Pollack there. Brian Stile who was a delegate to the Republican National Convention back when Paul Ryan was a vice presidential candidate alongside Mitt Romney in Tampa in 2012. Mark Pocan, we talked to him about an hour ago, the winner against Peter Thuran. Once again, Mark Pocan probably a little bit concerned right now about what's going on in the 3rd District with Ron Kind getting quite the challenge there in the La Crosse area. But Mark Pocan's going back for 2 more years. Absolutely no surprise whatsoever for the Madison 4-term congressman. Let's look at the other races, the congressional races. Gwen Moore, an easy winner. This is just about 100%. In Milwaukee, no surprise there. She's an easy winner. Again, though, we will have those absentee ballots. Remember, those apply to this race as well. But again, it predominantly goes to the Democrat. Scott Fitzgerald appears to be leaving the Wisconsin State Senate. He is headed to Washington now. This is interesting, not only of the impact that it will have. You know, it doesn't really have. He's replacing Jim Sensenbrenner. He was in since 1979. Jim Sensenbrenner served that district in Dodge, Jefferson, and Waukesha counties. Scott Fitzgerald. This is going to be interesting to see what his leadership departure from the Wisconsin Senate really means to a lot of issues that he's been kind of central in over quite a long time. So Scott Fitzgerald's now going to Washington. We'll see how that impacts our state legislature.
And it'll be interesting to see too how he, what's the word I'm looking for? How he has been here in Wisconsin, how he will do now outside of that group.
Well, and you saw it with Glenn Grothman. He was one in that same situation who went to Washington, and now he voted in line with President Trump more than any other United States congressman. So he was with the president every step of the way, and he is going back as well with 72% of precincts reporting in the Wisconsin 6th. Glenn Grothman's going back to D.C.
All right, for our continuing local coverage of tonight's races, we are currently streaming nonstop on channel3000.com and our streaming app, Channel 3000 Plus. Just head to channel3000.com/apps to find your connection to our coverage. Once again, that is channel3000.com/apps.
I'm free.
Thanks for joining us once again tonight. We have team coverage of the latest school referendum results. Adam Duxter live in Rock County with an update on how voters are leaning, and he has spent that time there in Janesville talking to the Janesville School District. Also, the other referendum there tonight regarding Black Hawk Technical College.
But we are going to start with Jamie Perez, and we are learning voters are in support of 2 requests from the Madison School District. Can you talk about that, Jamie?
Yeah, so these requests are worth a combined $350 million, and it's broken down into 2 parts. So let me go over that really quick with you. Spend $317 million on building projects, which includes improvements to all of their high schools and a new elementary school. Now, if this referendum passes, construction to renovate Madison's 4 main high schools would happen, and they would add an elementary school that would wrap up in 2024. Now, the capital referendum would cost the average property owner about $140 per year for the next 22 years. Now, the operating referendum would allow the district to surpass the state-imposed revenue limits at an increasing amount each of the next 4 years. Now, here's how it would break down. $6 million for the first year, $8 million the next, $9 million, and $10 million. And that is to pay for yearly costs for programming and staff. Now, exactly how the funds would be spent would be part of the district's annual budget process, with the school board giving final approval. So here's what's next in the process going forward. MMSD will start a year-long planning and design initiative with families, staff, and they would get community input. Now, this would be in early 2021. That would be followed by a competitive bidding process in the winter and spring of 2022. Construction is expected to start in the summer of 2022, with completion around August of 2024. Now, at a press conference about an hour ago, district administrators thanked voters for the overwhelming support.
To entrust us with the tremendous responsibility, make good on their investment in our schools and our children, and provide our students the best possible opportunity to be career, college, and community ready.
Now, they said one of the main concerns that people had who voted against these referendums, that it was just the uncertainty of the pandemic. But the district administrators say that the time to invest in the students' future is now. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about this with the superintendent on News 3 Now this morning, tomorrow at 6:45. So that's the kind of an overview of what passed in the MMSD referendums tonight. But right now we're going to head on over to Adam Duxter, who is live in Rock County with an update on the referendums there.
All right, do we have Adam? He is in Janesville tonight.
In Janesville, we are still waiting to figure out those results here in Janesville because we are still really waiting on those absentee ballots in Janesville. And as a reminder, more than half of Janesville's voters put in an absentee vote. They said close to 56%, or more than 20,000 people. And as of right now, they still do not have those votes in. So even though we're looking at the results page and seeing School District of Janesville, both of those referendums they've got up there passing, as well as the Blackhawk Tech referendum passing, it still is too early to say with any sort of definity that those are going to pass for sure, because we are still waiting on just about half those votes.
All right, that's Adam Duxter live in Janesville tonight. Adam, thank you very much. We saw those numbers, the Janesville school referendum and the Blackhawk Tech referendum as well, all passing there, it would appear, or they're on the way in Rock County tonight. We want to remind you to stay with us. We're going to be cutting in with network coverage, and stay with us throughout the evening as our coverage continues at channel3000.com and Channel 3000 Plus. Stay with us.
Thank you for staying with us. More local live election coverage right now. We are still closely watching tonight's presidential race. And here's where the votes stand in Wisconsin right now. But we won't know for sure until well into the morning or possibly beyond.
Our Susan Simon joins us once again with some experts to discuss the integrity of the election and much more. Susan?
Eric and Charlotte, thank you. Back with us tonight are our panelists, Ken Mayer, UW-Madison political scientist, former Fitchburg mayor and member of Black Women for Biden, Frances Huntley Cooper, and Wisconsin strategist Brian Schimming from Wisconsin Strategies. You guys are troopers. Thank you for hanging in with me tonight. I appreciate. Oh, Senator Bernier, you're still here as well.
Oh, yeah, I'm here.
Oh, I'm so glad to see that. I thought you had a prior engagement. Senator Kathy Bernier is a Republican state senator from the 23rd Senate District in Wisconsin, the western part of the state, and she was the Chippewa County clerk for 13 years. I'm so glad we're still all with us.
We're all together.
Ken, where are we? Where are we right now? What's happening in Wisconsin, and when will we know which way our state is going to go?
So it's going to be a while. Which was something that everybody needed to be prepared for. But there are some screwy things going on. We were talking about this before we went live. There are some screwy things going on with the way that the results are being reported, with Milwaukee reporting 93% of the precincts, but only about 40% of the votes that were cast in 2016. And what that tells us is that there are a lot of votes that have not been counted yet, which we seem probably are votes, absentee ballots that are counted centrally as opposed to in the precincts. And the same thing is true in Michigan. The same thing is true in Pennsylvania. So it literally is true that it is going to be a day or two or three or longer before the result is known with any sense of definitiveness.
That's the national picture, or that's the Wisconsin picture?
Well, Wisconsin is probably going to, I would imagine, will finish or get a pretty complete count by tomorrow. I don't know exactly when. I think the Milwaukee Commission has said that they hope to have their absentee count completed by 4 or 5 a.m. But in Michigan, it may be a while. In Pennsylvania, we'll be accepting, under the current rules, we'll be accepting postmarked ballots as late as Friday. And again, if this comes down to a few tens of thousands of votes, those ballots could easily be decisive. So, people need to buckle in and be patient, and we're going to have to wait for a while.
Brian, have you seen any examples tonight, either in Wisconsin or across the country, where the mail-in ballots may be putting the integrity of the vote in question after all the dire warnings? And there's been a lot of dire warnings about people were warned to expect long lines, disinformation, even violence in some situations. Have we seen any systemic problems tonight?
I haven't. In fact, I was just listening to some commentary on that very topic, because even from the Biden or from the Trump camp, even in the states that were, reasonably close or within a couple of points that have now been called or seem to be being called one way or the other. Texas, North Carolina hasn't been called. Texas has, but North Carolina has not been called, but it is leaning towards the president, as in Georgia, but very slightly. That's a little less certain, but very little out there right now in terms of any potential havoc. I think the worst will be saved for last in that case, is with Pennsylvania, as Ken was pointing out. And also, as he mentioned, and Kathy was talking before, we were talking in the earlier segment about central count locations. Just in Wisconsin alone, 39 communities in 14 counties tally their absentee ballots in central count locations where, during the day today, poll workers were spending the day loading machines up. So Wisconsin's count, I do know from watching results in the last hour or so, the president, this is changing by the minute, had been ahead in Wisconsin by about 86,000 votes, and yet there were 160,000 uncounted absentee ballots in Milwaukee. And I'm not disparaging that. I'm just saying that's a fact. Those probably break 75, 80% for Biden. And all of a sudden you've got a 15 or 20,000 vote race statewide. So we could be pulling an all-nighter for several nights.
Senator Bernier, can you shed any more clarity on that?
Yeah, so when we saw the precincts that came in, I think it was, Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, but 90-some% of the precincts reporting in Milwaukee. But the precincts, like I mentioned before, the polling places they end their election, they do their totals, and they have a total, but it doesn't count all of the ballots from the central count location. And so that's the confusion, I think.
I think that's right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so each polling place ends their election day activity and they report. But then again, all of the central count locations have not reported yet. And so, we need to keep our powder dry and sit back and wait for those central count to finish up. But I did note, I was watching since since it was mentioned that Sauk County has been right on the presidential election. I noticed that they had 0 reporting units just before we came on. So they're keeping us in suspense.
So according to the Washington Post, Sauk County is basically tied. It's 50-48 for Trump with about half the vote in. So.
Oh, so, okay. I don't have 2 computers.
That's why we have Ken. Ken's the numbers guy. He has all of that inside, in the weeds information. Frances, you have a really good perspective on what's happening tonight because you were the former mayor of Fitchburg. So you have the experience of being a candidate and a clerk. How does a night like tonight play out in a smaller municipality like Fitchburg?
Fitchburg, I think, even, it's been a long time since I've been mayor, but Fitchburg's numbers usually roll in pretty quickly. The city clerk is real organized, and I have actually, since haven't been an elected official in a while, I've actually worked, as I said, in some of the polling places with different roles, and they have it pretty smooth. They're organized. The same folks come back year after year. They're very trained and professional, and they take care of business. So I haven't seen any of the Fitchburg results, and I was asking Brian that earlier. But I'm sure they're in, and it just goes without glitches there in Fitchburg. And even when the absentee ballots were submitted earlier, they looked at those ballots, and if they found that someone hadn't signed it, they picked up the phone, called the person, had them come in and sign it. So they have a pretty smooth system going. And I want to give credit also, I think, to the city clerk in Madison, because I've been to a lot of her training in Fitchburg and a lot of the smaller municipalities in Dane County area. We follow the lead of Madison. We get assistance from them. Mm-hmm. So that's been very helpful.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. The clerks have all gotten an A+ today for what they've had to deal with. Senator Bernier, are things getting lost in translation here at all when we're trying to understand what's happening in Wisconsin? Is there a distinction between counting and certifying ballots?
Oh, significant distinction. So on election night or the next day, in this case, whenever all of the tallies are into the county clerk, and we sometimes have to hold off. I used to do my canvass on Thursday after the election. But since we have the provisional ballot option, we don't do it until the following week. We, meaning the county clerks. The municipal clerks have until Friday at 4 p.m., I believe, for anyone who got a provisional ballot, meaning that they got a provisional ballot because they forgot their ID. It was too late to go get it. And so they can do a provisional ballot. We have far fewer provisional ballots in the state of Wisconsin than many other states. But we do have some, and so therefore they hold off until then. But the county clerk's responsible for pulling all of that information in from each municipality and putting it all together. And then they have a board of canvass, which is a Republican, a Democrat, and then whatever the county clerk is. And they canvass all of those tally sheets and all of that information from Election Day. And then they certify that to the Wisconsin Election Commission. And then the Wisconsin Election Commission goes through all of the information again. And then they do the official certification of the winners from Election Day. And so that can take up to 2 weeks before it's actually certified results.
So would you like to give a prediction of when you think we'll know what?
Well, you know, fortunately, we didn't have a judge that changed our law. And so we have a great number of absentee votes, absentee ballots. But I think our municipal clerks are poised to take care of that within, but probably by tomorrow night. So once that is done, and they still have to hold off a bit until Friday if we have provisional ballots. So I don't see Wisconsin's results being questioned. Although I tell you, if it's so close that we have a recount, I assure you that the municipal clerks will be pulling their hair out because we've had a number of statewide recounts, and it is a challenge to say the least. But I have all the confidence in the world that our election results will be accurate, and the processes and procedures will be followed, and our official election results will be known in short order.
Brian, you've been involved in a recount or two. What does that involve, and is that something that you see coming down the pipe?
I hope not. It's a staggering effort, and really what you're doing in this case, it appears you'd be recounting about 3 million ballots. You don't have to, when you ask for a recount, you can ask for a more limited recount if there are questions in particular counties or cities or areas. I've been part of those before too, on both sides of the table. But the truth of the matter is, it's a staggering effort with hundreds of volunteers, attorneys, party officials, people from outside the process, various committees. And in this case, because the presidency may be on the line, there will be enormous national attention to Wisconsin or any state that would be involved in a recount. It's very costly. It can be time consuming. And to Kathy's, to the senator's point, it's a lot of people ripping out their hair because you end up looking at fairly small issues that you wouldn't think about sitting here tonight going, hey, what are the two totals? It gets down to questions of voters' intent. Was the envelope, envelopes filled out right? Was the ballot, signed, all those
but
types
no
of
hanging chads, Brian.
Yeah, no, we don't want that. No chance. We don't want that in Wisconsin.
No.
Hopefully we'll be able to avoid it, but oftentimes, frankly, when it's this close, it ends up unavoidable. And that will certainly be the case if the presidency is on the line.
Ken, what do you think about that? Do you see any evidence that we're heading for chaos in the aftermath of this? Or is it just that if we all, be patient and wait it out, the system is working as well as it could?
So I would say, chaos unlikely, because there have been two statewide recounts in the last 10 years, one of which I worked on with Brian back in 2011. And the thing about recounts is that there's a vanishingly small probability that it actually changes the result, unless you're looking at 3 million votes where the margin is a couple of hundred votes. And then you get into possible disputes about the validity of particular ballots, and there could be fights. But I think it's very unlikely that the margin will be so close that could actually affect the outcome. Now, whether there's litigation over it or challenges is a separate issue. Right. I think a recount is unlikely, and the work we've done some research on recounts, and they almost never change the result. And in Wisconsin, the biggest effect that you see is the way that scatter votes are counted. They're kind of ignored, and that the major party totals don't change much at all. So I think that's that's certainly possible, but I'd say very unlikely.
We shall see. That's all the time we have. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. offering such amazing perspective on such an exciting night, but you know, the plot thickens. We're still we're still waiting for the outcome. But thank you all for joining us, for your time. You devoted a lot of time to us tonight. We're very, very grateful. And I'll probably be calling you tomorrow and in the days to come as we continue to follow this. Senator Kathy Bernier, Ken Mayer, Brian Schimming, and Frances Huntley Cooper. My thanks to all four of you.
Take care, all.
Have a good night, everybody. Get some rest, Susan.
Yeah. Eric and Charlotte, back to you.
Susan, thank you. More than half of the votes are counted in Rock County.
That's one of those key areas of the state that we are really closely watching tonight. There's been kind of some issues with getting some tabulations done from some of those, I know the Sears. Let's go to Adam Duxer for the very latest on what's happening in Janesville and also in Beloit as it pertains to some of these referenda there. Adam?
Well, we knew that the votes were going to be somewhat delayed in Rock County just because of how much of a surge we saw in early voting and absentee voting. But where we're at right now is hopefully close to an answer coming sometime soon. And I'm actually joined by Rock County Clerk Lisa Tollefson. Lisa, it's been a busy day, but how would you say things are looking right now?
It's looking good. We have roughly 30% of the vote that's going to be coming in yet. So we've got central count from Janesville, a little bit from city of Beloit yet, and a couple of different polling locations that have to come in yet. But 30% of our vote is all we have remaining, and that's going to be here fairly soon.
And of that 30% of the vote, I mean, how much of that will be knocked out just by getting the absentee results from Janesville?
Roughly 23,000 votes are going to be coming just from the city of Janesville.
We were at St. Pat's watching those votes come in and watching that new machine, and it just seemed like things were moving so smoothly. How would you say today went, and how do you feel about the way things went down today?
I think they went great. I have to admit, in the morning, there was a little problem with the machine getting going at first, and it was slow starting. But once they got that figured out and moving well, they were zooming through all of those. It was pretty cool to watch it, wasn't it?
And I know you were saying without having that machine, and for our viewers, the new machine this year can count all of these absentee votes. You know, they can stack them on and it can just whiz through them, right? Whereas before they would have to be counted basically individually, just filed through. You were saying with the old system that we were doing, how long would it have taken to go through all of those absentee votes? And I guess what is the consequences of having it take so long?
So we figured, based on how many we were able to run through those machines in August, we figured for the amount we would have in November, and we were pretty close on our numbers, 35 hours to run those ballots through.
Wow.
And the consequence is that our state statute doesn't allow us to adjourn. We have to keep going. Have a lot of tired people.
Yeah.
So, yes, very tired.
So 35 hours compared to, you know, even though it feels like we're waiting, what you're saying is the situation could be, you know, a lot worse.
A lot worse.
So,
yes.
again,
I'm very happy with how this turned out.
Absolutely. And it's an election unlike any other where we've seen such a rise in early voting and absentee voting. How did that make an impact? Obviously, polls are closed now, but how did that make an impact to what we saw at the polls today?
The impact was so many people decided to absentee vote. It actually kept a lot of people home. So we didn't have as many people. We were able to space the lines and get people through more safely with all the precautions we took with COVID. So if we had those voters that voted absentee at the polls, we'd still be counting. We'd still have people in line possibly to get them through safely.
I know you've been involved in elections for quite some time. You've been doing this for some time. Where does this rank for you in terms of all-time elections and craziness and weirdness, but also, just like you've said and you made mention of, ingenuity and people coming together? I guess, what will stand out when this is all said and done for you from this election?
The number of absentees, that and using the high-speed scanner, the number of people who volunteered to be poll workers was amazing. We actually had lists of backups. We had so many, and it was awesome to see all those poll workers step forward to help us get everything done.
And obviously, we're not over yet, but if there's anything you feel like you've learned from this time around or maybe could apply to years to come, or where do you think we go from here?
I see us using the absentee process a lot more, because people are so used to it. They see how easy it is. I don't see us going back to where the majority of people vote in person. I really see us linking more towards more people doing in absentee, whether it's before the polls open or before Election Day, or by mail. I really see that shift
it makes it so much easier to do.
So again, where we're at right now, we're still waiting for some of those big chunks, right? You said 30%, so almost a third of the vote to come in, and it'll all come in at once, I guess. How long does that take to process? Can you give us kind of an idea, but behind the curtain of how that process works? I know we were talking a little bit before we got started here about, how quickly we'll see just such a big surge of those votes come in.
So once we upload, we'll put it up to our website all together. So you will probably see it all at our next upload. Part of it's come in, and we're just loading it now. Once we get that one last piece we need, then we'll put everything back up on the website. We're very close right now.
So very close to being all said and done.
Right.
Okay, so is there anything else that you feel like our viewers would need to know about this race in Rock County and how things played out today? I know there was so much emphasis, so much of almost a magnifying glass on our county to see how things played out here and how that could be indicative of how things played out across the state. But is there anything else that stands out to you or you found interesting or significant about today?
Well, besides the flat tire I got this morning, so it was been an interesting day. The way that everyone came out to vote, the numbers of people interested, the record number of voters we're going to have today. That's what stands out the most.
Well, Lisa, they say it's not how you start, it's how you finish. So the flat tire to start the day, at this point, hopefully it wasn't a bad omen of things to come. Lisa, thank you for joining us. And I do appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. And again, guys, with that 1/3, almost 30% of votes yet to come in, the races we really are watching, some of those referendums, especially the one right here in Janesville, even though on the website it looks like we've got all those precincts reporting, those 20,000 plus absentee votes can really make a change there. So again, even though we've got on the website where it might look like everyone's got their vote in, we could still see a significant shift in those numbers. So again, the SDJ, that's the School District of Janesville referendum, and then the Blackhawk Tech referendum as well. We will hopefully have a better idea of where those stand within the next half hour or so.
All right, we're going to be standing by for that. Adam, some great questions, some great information there. And Lisa, what a day for her, huh? Started with a flat tire, and she's still talking to us right now. Adam, thank you.
Thank you.
A look at some of the races we're continuing to follow right now. Clinton School referendum, not far from where Adam is. The yeses have it there as well. 100% of precincts reporting 52-48.
More live local election coverage right now. The Madison Metropolitan School District passed its referendum with overwhelming support. The first piece asked for $317 million for building projects. The district is also approved to exceed the levy limit by $33 million over the next 4 years to pay for yearly costs for programming and staff.
School district leaders held a press conference thanking the community a short time ago.
We recognize the hardships this pandemic has caused our community, families, and staff, and the unwavering support from our community in the form of a successful referenda, even during these challenging times, as Dr. Jenkins mentioned, has left us all within the MMSD family humbled. We're grateful and so moved by their love.
All right, with the passing of the referendums also comes an increase in your property taxes. For the first one, taxes will go up $80 over the previous year for the owner of an average Madison home, so around $300 grand or so. For the second, referenda adds $140 per year for the average homeowner.
The presidential race is still too close to call and will be for several more hours. Here is where the votes stand in Wisconsin right now, but we won't know for sure until well into the morning. or perhaps beyond. How Wisconsin goes, that's going to depend on certain areas of the state. Naomi Coles joins us now with an update.
Charlotte, there's one big storyline I'm seeing right now in Wisconsin, and that is in rural Wisconsin. If we take, and again, Trump had to overperform here from 2016, and by and large, we are seeing that to be the case. I'm going to hone in on two counties here. First of all, St. Croix County. Right now, he's taking this with 95% precincts reporting 61%. That's a margin 6 points higher than he took 55% 4 years ago. The reason I'm looking at St. Croix, this is it's the second highest population center in the 7th congressional district. If we go back out and look at Marathon County, again, he picked up 93% precincts reporting. He's picking up 2 more points than he did here 4 years ago. So these are the 2 major population centers in rural Wisconsin. We're seeing that also in other counties in rural Wisconsin. Amy Reed, she's looking at who these candidates are performing well with across the state. Amy?
Well, the issues for the voters in these counties are very different depending on who they're voting for, and that's not how it was in 2016. The economy is the only issue that cracks the top 5 for both Trump and Biden supporters, according to Pew Research. And what we're seeing for other big issues on either side is when a high percentage of one supporter say an issue is very important, the other side just doesn't match. For Biden supporters, the top issue, according to Pew Research, is healthcare. Coronavirus and racial equality are up there too. For Trump supporters, it's the economy and violent crime. Those 2 issues for Trump could help him in Milwaukee suburbs and in the Southeast. So far, something interesting coming out of exit polling from CNN bodes well for Trump farther north. Exit polls show Trump is doing better than Biden among white, non-college educated voters, and that will be key for his turnout in the Green Bay area. Having good turnout in that demographic was a big reason for his success in the state in 2016.
All right, Amy, Naomi, thank you. We'll join you back here on the air in a bit for another update as our America Decides 2020 coverage continues. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with News 3 Now on what has been a long election day in Wisconsin. This is the last half hour of our special continuing local coverage tonight.
For the next 30 minutes, we will recap some of the races already called, as well as check in with several of our reporters on some of the other races still being tallied.
Well, some big referendums, of course, in Madison, both getting passed tonight. The district has to spend $317 million on building projects. That includes improvements to all the high schools and a new elementary school. It passed. And secondly, the district needed the levy limits to be exceeded by $33 million over 4 years to help attract and keep talent, as well as provide new programs for students. That passed as well.
And let's go to Jamie Perez now with an update on that. Jamie?
All right, well, this is really a historic win for the Madison School District, so I kind of wanted to give you a better picture of what the passing of these referendums means for you at home and for the future of the school district. So they said that with the passing, they can make sure that all students have access to the internet, they can attract and retain more teachers of color, they can move to a full-day 4K program, invest in early literacy, put more into the district's equity projects, keep class sizes at a manageable number, make major renovations at their high schools, build a new elementary school in the Rimrock Road area to replace a school that's currently being leased from Monona, and renovate the Hoyt School to serve as a high school for students who are currently learning in a leased strip mall and an elementary school. Now, tonight at a press conference about a couple hours ago, they thanked everyone who voted in favor, but they also addressed the near 20% of voters who did not support these referendums.
We spoke to over thousands of people, had over 40 conversations out in our community, actually more than that. But we did hear back from the individuals once we surveyed them. Some individuals were not for the